Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Packs of Cube series here on the Collected Conjuring channel. My name is John Cos and I'll be your host as usual. The set we're talking about today is War of the Spark, and that's where our packs are going to be ripped from. But before we get into War of the Spark, I want to address what we had talked about at the beginning of the previous video, which was that when we did Guilds of Ravnica, we were missing the split cards from our pool. We're not going to play either of the green-white cards. Those don't fit into the red-white aggressive deck that we built. We didn't touch green in either of the two decks that we built because we had the red-white aggressive deck and the blue-black more controlling and surveilling deck. So this card does slot into the blue-black deck. I consulted with Dom the Bearded Guy offline because I wasn't 100% sure what we wanted to cut, and he did what he's supposed to and pointed out the obvious that Radical Idea is a much worse card in the Dimir deck than Discovery Dispersal is. So this is the change that we've made to that, and it's been updated in the Archidekt links in the original video. So that's all taken care of. So now, today's set, we're going to move on to War of the Spark. Planeswalkers, more Planeswalkers, uncommon Planeswalkers, rare Planeswalkers, mythic rare Planeswalkers. There's a Planeswalker in every single pack of War of the Spark. The other thing that they did for the first time in this set is have Planeswalkers with static abilities that affect the entire battlefield while the Planeswalker is in play. So, hope you like Planeswalkers. That's what we're doing here. The other thing that I want to address before we get into the pack opening video is I had mentioned at the beginning of the last video that I had changed from using a green felt background to a light blue playmat for card recognition purposes, and the deck builder card cam recognizes the cards much, much better with this light blue playmat than it did with the green one previously. So the pack opening will be a little bit smoother than it was in the past. You'll still, if you see me flip over a card, that means that it wasn't recognized and it's something that I had to address later. And we do always go back through and watch the pack opening video again, make sure that we capture everything, the right number of everything. So all of that stuff is taken care of. So let's get right into ripping some packs. Alright, let's rip some packs. As usual, I'm just going to go through the decent commons and uncommons and then touch on the rares, as well as the planeswalkers that we open here since it's War of the Spark. First one I see is Palombright Druid, comes in and proliferates, adding a counter to all planeswalkers and anything with a +1/+1 counter. Neoform seems like a cool cube card, but probably doesn't go in a limited deck. Saheeli, Sublime Artificer, is great. Every time you cast a non-creature spell, she creates a 1/1 servo token. Trusted Pegasus, flying creature that gives something else flying when it attacks, so that's pretty good. And our first mythic, Gideon Blackblade. Lazotep Reaver comes in, amasses, which creates a zombie token and adds a +1/+1 counter to it, or adds a token to an existing army. Death Sprout, good unconditional removal spell. Dreadhorde Arcanist, being an Izzet Mage, I'd prefer to play that card. If we don't, well, I'm sure I'll get it into the cube somehow. Nothing super exciting out of commons in this pack. Liliana's Triumph is an edict that makes your opponent discard a card if you have a Liliana Planeswalker. Angrath is our uncommon Planeswalker here. It looks like we got a foil Liliana's Triumph also in the pack. Evolution Sage. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, proliferate. That's a good card. Elite Guard Mage is something that would go in any blue-white Flyers deck. It gains you life and draws a card when it comes into play. Karn is good and constructed, but not necessarily limited, so we probably won't put it in a deck, but we probably will add it to the cube at some point. Aven Eternal is a flyer that adds to your zombie armies as well. Vraska is our Planeswalker here. Oh, second Mythic. So after going about 25 packs without a single Mythic, we have now 2 in this pool with God Eternal Bontu. That's a good card overall, and also if we end up in some kind of sacrifice theme in the cube, that'll be especially relevant there. Wanderer's Strike, unconditional removal plus a proliferate. Eternal Skylord gives your zombie tokens flying, and now we have the bane of most people's existence, Teferi Time Raveler. Anybody who's played Standard recently probably hates that card, is sick of playing it, or thinks it's the greatest card ever, but there's no middle ground. Spark Harvest, unconditional creature or planeswalker removal, play any amount of those. Samet's our planeswalker here. And Bolas's Citadel is a card that'll probably end up in the cube because it would be fun to build around that card, but I don't see it being great in the regular limited environment. Nothing else exciting out of the commons, but we do have a Leyline Prowler, which fixes for mana. The Planeswalker here is Dovin, which makes your opponent's artifacts, enchantments, and creatures cost more. And Rescuer Sphinx, which goes into any sort of blue-based flying deck. Another copy of Spark Harvest. And Dovin's Veto, and another Saheeli. So I'm thinking we're probably going to have some sort of Azorius controlling kind of deck now that we have a Veto, 2 Saheelis, and the Teferi. Cruel Celebrant, cool card. Don't see much Orzhov support, so probably won't be in a deck, but would definitely make it in the cube. Another Pound Blight Druid for proliferating. And we're coming up to the end here. Our last Planeswalker is Davriel, and last Wear is Deliver Unto Evil, which probably won't get played. Hello, and welcome back to episode 3 of Packs to Cube. Here we have War of the Spark that we're looking at here. Kind of Planeswalkers, 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 Planeswalkers. Joined as usual by Dom the Bearded Guy, here to keep me in line and make sure that decks that I build make sense. So, starting off, I see 2 very glaring things that I think might drive where the decks go. Number 1 being Teferi Time Raveler, and I hope that seeing this card on your screen isn't triggering any bad thoughts, because it's completely dominated the standard format since it was put into place, and that will finally end when he rotates out. But that's the only reason why he's going away, because the card is just busted. The other thing that I see here is that we have a Bontu plus a Death Sprout plus 2 Leyline Prowlers, which could end up with some kind of base green-black splash whatever the heck we want kind of deck as the second one. what do you think about starting with putting those cards into the two piles to start for deck building?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if those were points 1 and 2, I'd like to make point 0, which is we finally found mythic rares, so maybe a little lucky.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm down with that split. Just make sure to put the Storivs in that green black deck too, because that card's sick.
sounds good. All right, so I'm just gonna do this for now, and then
So
we'll
not that
put.
the naming conventions would say that we're ignoring red, but there's a lot of hybrid cards, and we also have some mana fixing like Guild Globes and things, so we may wind up putting it in one of the decks. They're not going to be super beatdowny, like we've had at least one deck in the last two pools, so splashing is certainly an option.
So let's get those prowlers in. Um, so out of the other rares, I think Karn probably ends up in the maybe we add him to the cube later if we feel like um, he'd be good there, but is definitely not going to be in one of the main decks here. And then Bolas' Citadel, I'd really like to play in the green black deck. Do you think that Bolas' Citadel is worth playing, or do you think we should move it into the maybe later pile?
Cool, S tier cool, but boy, I would start it in a maybe pile, and if we feel like the deck can support it, we'll dig it out.
Sounds good. Um, Deliverant to Evil, that wasn't a very good card. Dreadhorde Arcanist, good and constructed. We'll probably play it if we end up in some kind of spells deck. But I definitely would like to revisit that as a card for later on in the cube.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Parhelion, I never actually played with this card. Do do you think that would fit in either in? I guess that would probably end up in the blue white deck. Do you think that fits anywhere or?
Yeah, I've played it a bunch actually. I probably drafted it more than any other human because I wanted to make it work. And there's again, you've heard me say it in every episode now. You're going to draw it some percentage of the time. It's going to do nothing, and you can't have many cards like that. But in the right deck, that's really trying to go long and really trying to come up the ground, it ends the game. It's potent. So as long as there's enough creatures that can crew it, I would put it in a controlling deck.
Okay, we'll put it in there for now, and see where we're at later. Atomic, I think, goes straight into that deck. A decent creature and gives us the advantage of being sort of a hate bearer that would be versatile in a cube. So I think that this is the exact kind of card that we want to be putting in one of these decks. Um, Single combat, I don't think, is even a discussion.
Agreed.
So we'll start off with the blue white deck. See what else we want to fit into there first. So of this, the Skylord definitely would go into that deck, I would think.
Correct.
Saheeli probably fits in that deck for sure too. I don't know that we'd play both. Maybe depends on how heavy blue we are early.
Well, the great thing about Saheeli is that she makes tokens when we make planeswalkers. So we're gonna, I think, be doing quite a bit of that in this.
Right on. Um, so then down here, this is the other thing that really drives me towards the blue-white controlling deck. We've got a Dovin's Veto. We have 2 copies of Dovin himself. And then we also have an Elite Guard Mage. And those are all... I don't think there's any reason that we would not play all of those cards there.
You may only want one Dovin. It doesn't do a lot of the times, but definitely at least one.
Yeah. Um,
We probably want that Gideon's Triumph, especially because we have a Gideon's Planeswalker, and we could just get them.
yeah. done. Bond of Discipline, no. So we'll go over to the commons. For white, we would play the Wanderer Strike in that deck.
Mm-hmm. My experience tells me that you're going to play that Teo's Light Shield in a control deck.
Sounds good. That would not be a card that was on my radar. And that's why I'm glad you're here.
Four makeshift battalions. Can we assemble them into a makeshift better than that card, or what?
Yeah, I have to. No. Oh, wait, no. I'm kidding. I won't actually do that. I thought there was one that searches, and that's why I wanted to add it. Like a Squadron Hawk kind of card. Because that I would play. But knowing that it's not makes it a bad card that you already knew that it was.
Or Giant is probably going to make this deck too. Like, gaining back 5 life in a control deck and shutting down ground attacks is real good.
Sounds good. Loxodon, Sergeant, probably.
Fine, but replaceable. I'd come back if we need it.
Okay.
We have yet needed to find cards, so.
That's true. We're not playing any of those. Probably not Gideon Sacrifice. We'd probably play a flyer just because it's a flyer. Oh, this is the one that gives something else fire too.
Yeah, particularly bust.
Yeah. I remember you now. We'll play some amount of the 3/4, I'm sure. Probably not both. Or maybe both.
Yeah.
Divine Arrow, we'd play one of those.
Yeah, much less impressive the longer the format went on, but we're playing it.
Yeah. Charm Stray is not in this deck. So we'll scroll up to the blue. Aven Eternal we will definitely play.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one that strikes out to me. Thunder Drakes. What's you feeling on Thunder Drake?
Yeah, I'd put it in for now. I don't know how often we're going to double spell, but you would even do it once. Very good body. Callous Dismissal is going to be in this deck. Between the fact that there's a lot of amass and in it itself leaves a body behind.
Is this a wall deck?
I hate that card.
Deal. Is this a contentious plan deck?
Depends on how many Planeswalkers we have and +1/+1 counters. It might be.
All right, we'll toss it in for just the time being. Transmutation, we would play at least one, probably both, maybe both of those.
Agree.
Spellkeeper, I don't think we really have much that we'd really want to get back, right?
Well, so the dream with that is to have the Raise Dead and then something else. But at this point, it doesn't really pull anything back. It's a great card, but maybe not for us.
I suppose if it's good with the Raise Dead card, we could potentially splash it in the other deck if we have one of those somewhere. No. Crush Descent. Maybe or no?
I tended to play one of, but again, I would skip it for now. We can always add it.
Okay.
That.
We'd probably play a Dam Breaker.
Agreed. I think we're playing the Erratic Visionaries too. Looting and blocking. You notice that we've started with a blue deck every time?
That's a pattern. Maybe we'll have to change it up for the next one. Yeah. I think the only thing that's surprising is that we didn't end up with a Simic deck out of Ravnica Allegiance, because that was what I played most. But tangent. Relentless Advance, no.
I mean, it's a spell that makes a creature, which is uniquely good, or I should say good, but better than you think it is. I'd probably add it. Like it triggers the Saheeli's. It
right.
gives flying with the Sky Lord. It does a lot. It's cuttable, but it's good.
Okay. So we'll come back and do cuts in a little bit. See that we'll have a few easy ones, and then I'm sure we'll have a few hard ones too. So let's.
Dam Breakers 4, 3, and 2.
Yeah. So let's move over to what's going to at least start off as a green-black deck, and then probably very greedily splash for other colors.
Well, you want to grab all the planeswalkers, right? So Vraska and Angrath are in there for sure.
Yep.
Davriel. And that Vizier right above Davriel is going to make the deck as well. Spark Harvest right just to your left. That's the premium removal spell.
Yep.
Especially if we can have some amass tokens. Spark Reaper, again, is a great way to burn off amass tokens.
Do you want Arlen?
I mean, Arlen's fine. Makes 2, 3, 3/3s before she dies. I mean,
Samadin for now.
So Toll the Invasion is good. You're going to want at least one of those. On the far left in black. Vampire Opportunist, one of those tricky cards that gets to be played on turn 2 as a disposable card, but also does something in the late game. Deceptively good.
Do we want either the Liliana's Triumphs? No.
I don't really like Edicts.
Evolution Sage we'd play in this deck for sure.
Agreed. The worst mass pump spell they've ever made.
And I was like, why don't I remember this card? It's like, oh, because I'm sure I never played it.
you filed it under never remember this card.
Yeah. All right, so wow, we're already at 20 cards in that deck.
Yeah, and it's like all planeswalkers.
Yeah. What?
You want the Lazotep Reaver in that deck for sure. That card's real good.
So what else do we have in black? You want the ghost form? Like a one of? No.
Too cute.
Alright, so I don't see anything else in black that we definitely want. Green. Grizzly seems okay. Palm Light Druid will play.
Mm-hmm. Proliferation is real good when you have 100 planeswalkers. Band Together is a really powerful removal spell, but are we even going to have 10 creatures? I don't know. But I guess we have mass. We'll see.
Yeah. Do we want a spider?
The Snare Spinner?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to do early if we need it, but...
Do that for now. Let's see.
Are there any red cards that were super sad that we're not playing? Because I don't think the answer is yes. Like Jaya's Greeting would make a red deck, but I'm not going to splash for it. Uh, Same story with Invading Manticore, would make a red deck, won't splash for it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about all these red cards.
Yeah, Dreadhorde Arcanist is the thing we're missing the most, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
And this is my cube, so it's going to end up in there at some point anyway because
There you
spells.
go.
What do we have?
Cyclops Electromancer is really good in the spells deck, but we don't have spells.
Yeah. I guess this is maybe the only thing that I'd even consider for either deck, and maybe the Outburst.
Oh,
Outburst is a little
I would be
overpriced.
game to splash an Outburst. I would never splash Dreadhorde Twins.
Okay.
Twins another card that would make a red deck, but isn't going to be splashed anywhere. Neoform, I would slide that into the cube board, just because it would be an interesting option to have.
Agreed.
Rescuer Sphinx should probably be in the blue-white deck.
All right. Well, that looks like a good place to go. So we'll start. How many? Okay, let's start with the easy one. We only have 4 cuts for the green black deck. Where's the thing that we have too many of? Spiders.
Yeah.
I can probably. We can just cut these.
I agree.
Spark Harvest, we would definitely play 2. Palomar Druid will definitely play 2. Do we
Cut
want...
one of here.
Cool. In agreement on that. So, Planeswalkers proliferate onto them. Deck. That's what we have here. Alright, I'm in.
Right, and then we have Storev to keep recurring our dead creatures and Planeswalkers. We have 2 of them. So this deck is very powerful.
Yeah. I like it. So this is Golgari P-dubs. Alright, so let's go to our Azorius deck. We have 35 cards in here so far. So we got about 12 or so cuts to make. We'll start by one of the Dovins. We'll get rid of. Do we want both transmutations?
No, I'd cut one.
Okay. Erratic Visionaries, do we want 2 of those or just 1?
Yeah, I would keep both. I would cut the Contentious Plans. We have way too many cards and it doesn't do enough.
Sounds good. Like maybe. Oh, Dam Breakers was the easy one. All 4 or just 3?
Cut 3 for now.
Okay.
And I would take out the Parhelion, I think. This deck is going to have a hard time crewing it. It doesn't have a ton of 4-power things to crew it. Like, you could play more Dam Breakers and try and crew Parhelion, but...
Okay, so we'll move this onto the maybe board because that seems like a build around for a cube. Somewhere, just not here.
And then cut an Enforcer Griffin. Well, actually, this deck is very expensive. We're never going to double spell. You might just want to cut the Thunder Drakes.
Okay. So where does that put us? 25, so we got 2 more to go.
So Saheeli triggers whenever we cast a non-creature spell.
Right.
And then she lets us make our token into a copy of an artifact or creature we control. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, it just seems like we're going to trigger it so much. Even if we don't make great copies, just to make a bunch of tokens is going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, again, given that we like the cards we have, I would start at the top end, because if you stay alive long enough, you can cast the other stuff whenever you get there.
Fair.
And I would cut one of the Forcer Griffins.
Oh, right.
And then I guess I'm cutting one of Bulwark or Dambreaker. And in this case, I'm probably cutting Bulwark because Proliferate seems great.
Yeah, so we have Teferi, Dovin, Gideon, 2 Saheelis. So I think the Proliferate's probably better too. I agree with that.
Plus amass tokens.
Yeah. The decks are less greedy than I thought, but that's because all the planeswalkers fit into hybrid hybrid status of the main colors that we're playing in the 2 decks. So
yeah, so I'm a little surprised like that neither deck is playing Mana Geode, but
that
it can also just be put in the maybe board.
Yeah.
And one of the decks should be playing Ugin's Conjurant because whatever deck has more Proliferate.
Okay, so that would be the green-black one. Because it's got the Evolution Sages. The Evolution Sage, 2 Plow, Bright Druids. When we go back to do fixing, it'll include artifact fixing. So the Guild Globes will definitely be considered at that point for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then that leaves us one more cut out of the Golgari deck.
I would cut one of the Toll of the Invasions then.
Yep. That was where my eyes went. All right. Azorius Teferi.
Yeah.
So,
Teferi screw.
Yeah, so that'll be the deck that, depending on who ends up drafting the cube, if it's somebody that we can trigger by putting a Teferi in, we will definitely do that. And if not, then I don't want to play against that card.
Right?
Yeah. That's the only value. The value is the tilt value on other people.
Agreed.
So there you have it. We have 2 decks here. We have Azorius featuring Teferi and Gideon, Golgari featuring Bantu, and a bunch of other planeswalkers that are mostly in the Jund colors, but are hybrid, so will all fit into a green-black deck. So that'll be the end of this episode. I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought on doing a closing.
See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. That's definitely staying in.